alone. Waiting for you. Say it. Sit down, say it, sit down. Hey, 'cause we live for you. Say we live.
WBISLP 1069, Winterville, Aden, Grifton, Southside, Greenville, North Carolina. We interrupt our regularly scheduled program to bring to you Special Talk with Akela. Thank you so much for listening to Awesome Radio 106.9 on your FM dial. We appreciate you spending your time with us today, all day, and every day on Awesome Radio. You can also find us online at wbisawesomeradio.org. You can also find us on social media. We are on GPAT, that's Greenville Pitt Access Television Channel 23. Do you have a Roku TV? Do you have the Roku channel? You can find us also on Roku. When you do the search and type in Awesome Radio, one word, or even GPAT, GPAT, our logos will pop up. You download us on your Roku television, and wow, the shows that we have here on Awesome Radio and on GPAT Channel 23, reaching all over the world, not just Pitt County, because we stream live also on GPAT. You could find us there on your Roku channel. Again, this is Special Talk with Akela. My special guest today is Laura King, and we're talking about domestic violence. Laura, hello and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on today.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here.
All right. So can you pull your mic just a little
Little
closer to you? All right.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, that's great. So we're talking about domestic violence and how to stop domestic violence or help stop domestic violence. I don't know if it can be really stopped completely all over the world, but we can do one at a time. Is that right?
Exactly right.
All right.
Exactly.
Again, welcome to Awesome Radio. You are invited to call in at 252-756-2008. If you have questions, comments, concerns, if you know someone who have experienced domestic violence by a spouse, a partner, or by just a friend, that's still domestic violence, right?
Yes, it is. Little outside of the legal definition, but in reality, yes, absolutely.
Okay. If you yourself are going through a domestic violence situation, if you know a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, if you have questions, comments for Laura on today, 252-756-2008 is the number to call in. You do not have to give your name. You can even disguise your voice if you'd like, but we want to hear from you. Laura King, thank you again for being here with us on Special Talk One-on-One with Akela. Tell us about the organization that you work with.
The organization is the Center for Family Violence Prevention.
Mm-hmm.
We've been around since the mid 80s.
Mm-hmm.
We're incorporated at that time and have been providing services since then. The organization began at that time with several social workers in Pitt County who began to notice a pattern of behavior and violence suffered by their clients. And there were no other services offered at that time. And they originally started taking these victims that they encountered, hiding them in their own homes at some risk to themselves, and then raising money to relocate them. And they would keep them there until they could afford a plane ticket or a train, bus, whatever, to get them to another area where there was safe haven with family or friends or job opportunities, something to remove them from the immediate proximity to their abuser. That the agency grew from that. They were talking in the community about a need for services, and at that time, Walter Jones applied to the federal government. The agency received a $1,300, small amount of money, but a $1,300 grant
Okay.
and set up an office, a one-person office downtown Greenville near the courthouse, and the agency grew from there.
Okay. So you service Pitt County, and what other counties do you serve?
We now service Pitt, Martin, and Washington counties,
Oh,
and
okay.
we do have offices in both of those other locations.
Okay. All right. So tell us about your story. Why do you work for this organization?
Well, I am also a domestic violence survivor.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a very young woman, and in the early 1970s, I was in that situation, lived with that situation for about 5.5 years, and then trying to get out was probably more difficult than staying in, or at least as difficult. What I found was that people didn't really understand domestic violence. They didn't understand that it's a pattern of behavior. Most people treated me and other victims at that time like an argument that gets out of hand,
Right.
and the help that's offered was sort of a kiss and make up advice
Right.
and go home together. And that's really not appropriate. It further traps the victim, and getting out of that situation was very difficult. Society didn't understand domestic violence. Law enforcement didn't. They didn't know how to treat a victim. The courts were the same. I sought counseling. I sought help from my pastor. None of them assisted me. And it's not because they weren't good people. They
They just didn't
just
know how.
didn't know how
Yeah.
or what was appropriate or truly understand the situation that I was in. So I was able to get away over time. It took some effort, but my life moved on, and I was able. I've remarried. I've been married now for 46 years,
Oh,
and
great.
with 4 children, and so life has been good to me. But when my children were growing up and they're hitting high school and middle school, I realized they're not going to need me every day from now on, and that I have time to do something worthwhile. And I just made the commitment to myself that I would devote my time to making sure that other victims in my community would never have to go through that process alone. That I would work to support whatever services were available and to make sure these victims were aware of those services.
What is domestic abuse and what does it look like?
It can take many, many forms. We always think about it as violence, somebody being hit or injured. It can start very subtly with
A
just,
push?
well, even less physical than that. Domestic abuse really is a situation where one person tries to gain power and control over another person. And they're willing to do a lot of different things to accomplish that.
Mind games?
Mind games for sure. A lot of emotional and psychological abuse. We've all heard about gaslighting. And so a lot of mental manipulation, a lot of humiliation to manage. The message is you're not attractive, you're stupid, you can't cook, you're a horrible mother. Just all of these things that will humiliate and destroy a victim's confidence. There's financial manipulation, lost control of the family finances, being allotted just a little bit of money, not really enough to do the job, and then being criticized because you can't manage money. Just different things like that. Victims are isolated from family and friends that would offer support or a more realistic picture of what's going on, so that the message that the abuser sends is more powerful because that's the only message you're getting. So to be isolated, threats of violence are common, and then the actual violence itself. And it can start with a push or a shove and go right up to very violent behavior, burns, broken bones. There's if if the human mind can imagine it, there's probably somebody out there that will carry it out. So the extremes. And then the ultimate power and control, of course, is homicide. And so a victim has to deal with
The threats
the
of.
threats and the abuse, and the emotional abuse is brutal. You know, if you try to leave me, I will tell social services that you're a bad mother and you'll lose your children. If you leave me, I will kill you. If you leave me, I'll kill our children. I'll kill myself. Just a lot laid on this victim to deal with and sort out. And sadly, some of those situations do actually happen.
You're listening to Awesome Radio here on 1069. We are live on social media. One-on-one talk with Akela, help stop domestic violence with Laura King. Laura is from the Center for Family Violence Prevention. 252-756-2008 is the number to call in if you have a question, comment, concern, if you have your own story that you would like to share. You do not have to give your name. We will not ask you for your name. We will not ask you where you're calling from. We just want to hear from you. 252-756-2008. If you are also watching on social media, you can put into the comments your questions, comments, concerns, or a piece of your story that you would like to share, and we will see that and we will read it out on the air live. So if you can comment on social media, that will be fine. If you want to call in, 252-756-2008, call in. If you want to say hi to Laura, call in, write it on social media, and she will respond accordingly. Center for Family Violence Prevention. Yesterday, Laura, there was an event. It was the 16th annual.
Sixth.
Oh, the sixth
Sixth
annual.
annual.
Okay. Tell us more about that and how did it come about to being your sixth annual?
Well, we call it our Domestic Violence Impact Luncheon. We think a part of eliminating, reducing domestic violence is community education. People who are in that situation to better understand that what they're experiencing is not unique to them. And also for people who aren't in that situation to perhaps recognize it among family and friends or just in the community in general and realize how pervasive it is and how as community members we need to respond and to support the victims and the agency that's providing service. So it's an educational event. It's also a fundraising event. So we have two purposes there. And it came about when our former city manager, Ron Kimball, lost his only child, he and his wife, to domestic violence. And there was a similar event in Charlotte. And some members of our board of directors attended that and then engaged the Kimballs to come here and tell their story. And that was our very first domestic violence impact luncheon. And then we have continued it annually since then.
That is totally awesome. So, a victim of domestic violence, you know someone who's going through domestic violence. I know someone who's going through domestic violence and knew someone, a survivor. The question often asked, leave. Why don't you just leave? It's not that simple. It's easier said than done, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It seems like a simple thing. If you're in a domestic violence situation, number one, you've probably heard these threats. Statistically, a victim's chances of being murdered increase 75% when they try to leave. If you think about it, if this is a power and control situation, leaving is the ultimate loss of control for the abuser. So they get very desperate to regain that control, and the excuse me, the situation gets much more dangerous. Excuse me. Also, if you look at a situation like that, If the victim has been controlled financially,
Mm-hmm.
that person may have no access to money.
Mm-hmm.
They may not own a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
The vehicle could be in the abuser's name, another form of control.
Mm-hmm.
The insurance for the vehicle is paid by the abuser. So
Mm-hmm.
if you leave, you have no transportation. If you've been controlled and sort of kept at home under the control of your abuser for years, you may not have a job. You may
Mm-hmm.
not have job skills.
Mm-hmm.
So you have no source of income.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a medical condition, you have no way to cover that if you've been injured. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have money for food or housing. If you have children, how do you care for them? How do you provide for them?
Yeah.
If you had a child with special needs in particular,
Mm-hmm.
how do you pay for what your child needs? So you are trapped and may make the conscious decision
Mm-hmm.
to suffer the abuse personally in order to provide for your children.
Mm-hmm.
The sad thing is what those children see and hear is so damaging to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real balancing act on the scale on what they need on one hand
Mm-hmm.
and how they are hurt on the other hand.
Mm-hmm.
So a victim really struggles there. This is where our agency comes in.
Mm-hmm.
We have safe shelter. That's the first thing. So if you leave, we can provide safe shelter. If you're thinking about leaving, we have staff that help with a safety plan. And this is to come to us and talk about your situation and let us take a look at your needs, and you can share with us
Mm-hmm.
your personal needs, your personal concerns about leaving, and we can work through that with you to develop a safety plan. When and how you can get out in the safest way. What documents you need to take with you.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to need when you leave that you can prepare for?
Mm-hmm.
That perhaps you could pack a bag and leave it with a friend who knew your situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your need to leave becomes an emergency situation,
Mm-hmm.
you're covered and you're ready.
Yes.
And this is all part of the victim, the survivor's planning process and
Mm-hmm.
part of their decision making. The abusers generally don't allow their victims to make many decisions for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They are controlled. One of the things we try to do is to restore a person's control in their environment.
Mm-hmm.
When a victim comes to us, we never, ever tell them what to do. We try to restore their ability to make their own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We discuss options with them. What are your rights under the law? What safe shelter is available? What services can we provide? Where is housing? How can we help you with a job? What do you want? And as soon as we can determine where they really want to go with their
Mm-hmm.
life, we can get them on the path to self-determination and instill some hope and some success for the future.
Mm. Men of domestic violence. Do you have many cases of that?
Not as many.
Mm-hmm.
I think men are a little hesitant to come forward. I think our society teaches them to be manly or says they should be,
Mm-hmm.
and to admit that they've been abused by a female
Mm-hmm.
is a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we do see that, and we do provide shelter for men in our safe house.
Mm-hmm.
We also provide shelter and all services for same-sex and transgender victims.
Mm-hmm.
So any human being that is being abused and needs help can come to us,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all treated equally and with the same services.
Now, with the domestic violence, we have the victims.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever get cases where the abuser comes in for help?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
We have had cases where abusers came to us as a ploy to make the victim appear to be the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to sort through that. We provide services to anybody that comes. And sometimes it's a sorting out process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if the abuser comes to us first, the abuser receives services first. And that's an unfortunate situation when it happens. It doesn't happen often.
Mm-hmm.
Our staff is pretty astute to what's going on and who is the primary offender in a case like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Hmm. Manipulation plays a great part into that. Does sometimes in the small cases of the abuser coming in to get help, are they trying to find that victim that they abused?
That has also been the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to assure any potential
Mm-hmm.
client that confidentiality is our first
Mm-hmm.
rule.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows you're there. No
Mm-hmm.
one knows you're not there. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody called and asked for you,
Mm-hmm.
as part of our services are called the safe house or contacted the safe house
Mm-hmm.
looking for you,
Mm-hmm.
we don't tell them anything.
Okay.
We don't tell them that you're there. We don't tell them that you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is revealed.
Okay.
And that's true even sort of in-house.
Mm-hmm.
A client comes in and deals with a staff member.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily true that other staff members even know your name or your situation.
Right.
If they need to share services, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but you are completely anonymous and your identity is protected, and no one knows and no one's going to know
Mm.
that you have received services from us.
So, someone listening right now
Mhm.
that may be being abused and listening to what you're saying,
Mhm.
so this truly is a safe haven, the Center for Family Violence Prevention,
Mhm.
that their identity will not
No,
accidentally be revealed
no,
and won't intentionally be revealed. They are truly in a safe haven.
absolutely not. And, that's our policy. It's a good policy. It
Mm-hmm.
protects the client.
Mm-hmm.
It is also a government regulation. If
Okay.
we receive government funding, confidentiality is
Mm-hmm.
the utmost.
Mm. Okay. So it's 22 past the hour. You're listening to Awesome Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in to us on the dial, on our website at wbisawesomeradio.org, on our social media platforms, 252 752. What's our number? 252 756 2008. Laura, I forgot our own number is 252 756 2008 is the number to call. You can disguise your voice if you like, if you want to tell pieces of your story. If you have questions for Laura and more about this organization here serving Pitt County, Martin County, and Washington County, right? It's the Center for Family Violence Prevention. Is there a telephone number?
252 758 4400.
Okay, 252 758 4400. And the calls are private
Yes,
and the calls are anonymous, can be. So if I were to call in being abused, do I have to give my name?
of course not.
Can I give an alias name?
You could, but ultimately it would be to your benefit to
Mm-hmm.
give us your name,
Mm-hmm.
so that we could deal with you more personally, more
Mm-hmm.
directly, more long term
Now,
to help.
what if I'm afraid and I'm scared? This is my first time, and he already said that he will harm me if I were to leave him, and he will track me down.
Hmm.
Okay, so when I call into your center, I may not want to give my real name at first
Hmm.
because I have to know that I can trust you.
Hmm. Exactly.
So can I just say my name is Sally Boo or
Sure.
somebody until I get to know your agency, trust your staff,
Hmm.
and then I can say, well, this is my real name.
Of course. Of course. When someone calls in and they're in fear,
Mm-hmm.
and most people who call us are. Um, One of the first things we try to do is determine if they are safe right this minute. Because we don't want to sit there on the phone if somebody's going to burst through the door and harm them.
Right.
So we determine that, and if they are not safe right that minute, we encourage them to hang up and call law enforcement.
Okay.
If they have a chance, if they're home alone and thinking about this and reaching out for help, then we can encourage them to make an appointment and come in. They can talk to someone on the phone and help determine their needs and where they need to go forward or how to go forward in their help. I will add that in Pitt County, we are particularly fortunate that we have a well-trained, well-educated, passionate, concerned law enforcement presence for domestic violence victims. Sadly, that's not true everywhere. Here, it is extraordinary. Our county functions, interagency function and cooperation where domestic violence concern is, like I said, is extraordinary. Other municipalities around the country have come here to study what we do, how we do it, so they can better serve their own communities.
Impressive.
And it is. And I don't think most people realize that. And I think a lot of people are afraid to involve law enforcement. And in this county, you don't need to be. These folks are going to help you. And that's important for victims to know.
I think sometimes too, Laura, involving law enforcement, the victim involving law enforcement, there's this thing, maybe they won't get here in time. I dial 911, they're coming, but this person is still hitting me at this time. Will they get here in time enough to save me?
I think so, but that's all circumstantial. You don't know where the officer who's called is coming from, what they're involved in. But I do know that this particular county, the law enforcement is particularly attuned to the needs of victims and will be there as soon as they possibly can. I think a quick response is something that you could anticipate.
Okay. All right. Now, when I was living in Beaufort County, not Beaufort County, yeah, Beaufort County, like Washington, North Carolina,
Yes, ma'am.
law enforcement had to be called. And that was one of my thoughts. Will they get here in time enough before one of us gets killed? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was either going to be me or him that was going to die that day if law enforcement had not come in to separate the situation. Yeah. So that's why I asked that question about that. And also, when you're living in fear as a victim and you get these threats, if you leave me, I will track you down.
Oh, yes.
I will go through your family,
Oh, yes.
kill
And
every last one of y'all. Yeah.
and now with cyber tracking available, it's even a worse situation. It's not just a physical tracking with a device maybe on your car or something, but cyber stalking is also a possibility.
Text threats,
All sorts of
phone
things.
calls, voicemails.
Mails, yes.
Wow. All right. All right. 28 past the hour. You're listening to Awesome Radio. Help Stop Domestic Violence with Laura King. Laura King just retired. Just retired. And what was your position again?
I was executive director of the center.
Okay. She just retired in March, you say, right?
Right, in
As the
March.
executive director, but now you're still working there
Part-time,
part-time.
enjoying a little retirement time, but working with the agency on special events and some community education.
As you're doing now, community
Exactly.
education. This is the agency she's speaking of, Center for Family Violence Prevention. And your office is
111 East 3rd Street,
111 East 3rd Street.
1 block east of the courthouse.
Okay, all right. So if you have a victim of domestic violence and they have to leave, when would be the best time to leave? At night or while the person is away working somewhere?
I would say away. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's less confrontational
Mm-hmm.
if nobody's there in your face threatening you, abusing you, assaulting you while you're trying to get out the door.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where our staff comes in, and they can talk to a victim about their particular circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
their particular family schedules, and help determine the best way to do this, the safest way to do
Mm-hmm.
this.
What is the telephone number again if someone needs to call your center?
252 758 4400.
Is this number available 24 hours?
It answers 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
There is a direct line, a 24-hour crisis line.
Mm-hmm.
If you call that number, you'll be given the crisis line number
Mm-hmm.
to call if it's after hours.
Is there a recording or will I actually speak to a live person?
That is a recording
Mm-hmm.
after hours. During the daytime, you'll get a live person.
Mm. Okay. So what if it is after hours, we in the midnight hours, and I need help. I need to reach out to a live person. What
You would be
do
the,
I
the
do?
the phone line would refer you to our hotline, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting here and I'm sorry you forgot your phone number, and I'm blanking on the hotline or the 24-hour crisis line number,
Mm-hmm.
but that number would be provided to you from the 758 number.
Is it on the back of here?
It
Okay.
ends in 3811, but I'm not
It
sure.
is
Okay, you have
24-hour crisis line number 252-752-3811.
811. Yes, thank you. That's embarrassing to me that I forgot that.
No,
But
no.
so
We're
that's
good.
24 hours,
Yes.
and that is numbers generally answered by our safe house
Mm-hmm.
after hours.
Mm-hmm.
So they have, connection to anything you would need at that time.
Hmm. Okay. So you provide services.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And what about clothing? What about food? What about money?
Money. Clothing
Mm-hmm.
is available through our store, My Sister's Closet.
Mm.
By the community's familiar with that,
Mm-hmm.
the clothes are donated from members of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And if client comes to us and needs clothes, and there's several circumstances that might happen. Either they've left home in a hurry
Mm-hmm.
and weren't able to take anything with them, or if they haven't worked in a number of years, need to set up a job interview and have absolutely nothing appropriate to wear.
Mm-hmm.
They're given a voucher
Mm-hmm.
and they can go to My Sister's Closet and get what they need.
Mm-hmm.
If they're actually hired for a job and need more appropriate work attire,
Mm-hmm.
they can go back and get more in what they need. The staff can help advise them, help them make selections, help find things that fit, put outfits together
Mm-hmm.
so that they can make the best use of that voucher.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big help. We also provide household items
Mm-hmm.
from our store, My Sister's Attic. My Sister's
Mm-hmm.
Closet it sells new and gently used women's clothes and accessories.
Mm-hmm.
My Sister's Attic sells furniture and home decor items.
Mm.
If a client is moving forward and moving into her own place, her own apartment for the first time and has nothing, we try to help out with enough chair to sit in, a bed to sleep in,
Yeah.
and enough kitchen items to make a meal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do that, and we also give them vouchers, and they come to the attic
Mm-hmm.
and are provided with those things.
Hmm.
It depends, again, on what we happen to have in stock, what's
Mm-hmm.
been donated, but we help any way we can.
Do you also help your survivors or victims move out of town?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's the luncheon yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
The funds we raised there are used largely or a lot for that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
if a client needs transportation, we do that. If she has a vehicle or he has a vehicle and can't afford the gas,
Mm-hmm.
we give them gas cards to leave. We try to, like I said, look at individual situations and see what that client needs, what they tell us they need, what is the most helpful to make them secure and to move forward in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to help with that as best we can.
Mm-hmm.
As with most nonprofits, funds are limited, but we do the best we can with what we've got. And
Right.
that is part of the assistance that we provide.
In some of your cases, have you ever had victims to go back to their abuser?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically,
Mm-hmm.
a victim leaves and returns to their abuser 7 times before a final break.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all part of the manipulation that we talked about before. I'm sorry, I love you, I'll never do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And when then we go back to the financial situation, the
Mm-hmm.
care for a child,
Mm-hmm.
all of the things that a human being needs are being offered by
Mm-hmm.
this abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that security that's tantalizing. There's also love and caring for the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
If that wasn't present, the victim wouldn't have been there in the first place.
Correct.
So you
Mm-hmm.
want to believe because that's what you really wanted to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And the situation is, like I said, very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
It takes some people a long time to
Mm-hmm.
get through that process, and it's
Mm-hmm.
understandable. Others stay until they are just absolutely done. I mean, they know that this is never going to work out, and they make that break and leave.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of back and forth, and we, as an organization, don't sit in judgment of that decision.
Mm-hmm.
If you came to us and received help and then went back, if you change your mind again, we're still going to be there for you.
Okay. That is awesome to
Yeah.
know that there's no judgment.
No.
And so the victims will not feel like
I can't go
you're
back
looking
there.
down
Yeah,
on them. Yeah, I can't go
absolutely.
back to that agency because they're going to judge me.
Exactly.
Is
We understand
silent
that.
treatment a form of abuse?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's, ignoring um, the victim's needs, ignoring their emotions, just cutting them off. Um,
So instead of me abusing you with my fist, I will abuse you by ignoring you.
exactly.
But we live in the same house, but I'm not talking to you.
Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Wow. So one is no worse than the other because the silent treatment is that
Exactly.
emotional abuse where that can play
Manipulation.
with your mind.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where mental health comes in.
You're not important enough to me to acknowledge you and your needs.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So a lot of people go through the silent treatment abuse,
Mhm.
which was part of my case as well. The silent treatment where the punching stopped,
Stopped.
the slapping stopped, the choking stopped, the kicking stopped,
Mhm.
the pulling my hair out stopped. But then the silent treatment began.
And you're not important enough for me to even acknowledge you.
But you know what, Laura?
Mhm.
I'd rather do the silent treatment than the physical.
The abuse.
Than the
Absolutely.
physical. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can deal with the silent treatment a little bit because I can give you the silent treatment too now.
Exactly.
Okay. So, all right. Well, give us that telephone number again where someone can call into your center to get help.
Okay. 252
Mm-hmm.
758 4400.
Mm-hmm.
And the 24-hour crisis line
Yes.
is 252 752 3811.
Okay. It's 39 minutes past the hour. We have about 11 more minutes here on this show, One on One with Akela. Today's topic is Help Stop Domestic Violence with Laura King. You're listening to Awesome Radio 1069 on your FM dial. Find us online, wbisawesomeradio.org. We are streaming live right now on social media. If you have a Roku TV, then you can download or program or add us to your channel. Yeah, add us to your channel. Awesome Radio, you will see our logo and also GPAT TV 23 on local cable. It's Greenville Pitt Access Television, Channel 23. You can find us right there on your local cable channel. Laura King,
Yes.
what else do you provide with your services at the Center for Family Violence Prevention? Now, family violence prevention. So you want to prevent family violence.
That
Now,
is the ultimate goal,
mhm,
absolutely.
tell us more that you do.
Like I said, when the client comes to us, the
Mhm.
first thing we do is try to determine their immediate safety needs
Mhm.
and work through that process. If they're safe and just need to talk and make a plan, we
Mhm.
encourage them to meet with our staff
Mhm.
to do that. If they need to leave, we
Mhm.
encourage law enforcement contact
Mhm.
and that support. If they don't have a place to go, we encourage them to enter our safe house
Mhm.
and safe shelter there. We accommodate 26 clients in our safe house, men and women and children.
Mhm.
We're currently under a construction project to add 8 more spaces.
Great.
Sadly, we are full often at different times of the year and
Yeah.
different seasons. Domestic violence is seasonal. It will depend on weather,
Mm.
holidays, just
Really?
a lot of times we're emptier around Christmas because people want to hold the family together.
Oh,
They don't
yeah.
want to leave and disrupt that environment, especially when there's children.
Mm.
So at the same time, if a client's been with us for a while, they may stay there over Christmas. So
Mhm.
it varies. Um, One of the other things we do first off is provide court advocacy.
Mhm.
And this is where one of our staff members will go to court with a client that needs to seek a domestic violence protective order.
Mhm.
And this is the court orders protection for the client. They can order the abuser to stay away from their home, from their workplace, from their children's school, from family homes where they might come to try to locate the victim. So that is ordered. There are provisions involving weapons,
Mhm.
all sorts of things that a is a victim right that the victim may not know about.
Mhm.
So the court advocate shares that piece with them, what their rights are, what they can ask for, and then we'll go to court with them as a support um, person. Court's intimidating.
Mhm.
And court's intimidating, I think, most any time to most people.
Mhm.
But if you're in that circumstance and you have somebody across the aisle who may want to kill you, it's
Mhm.
even more difficult and the stress is
Mhm.
incredible. So the advocate is there to ease the victim through that process.
Okay.
If there's a circumstance where the victim needs to press charges against their abuser or feels like they want to, our advocate also works with them through that process.
Mm.
We have counselors available,
Mhm.
adult counselors, we have a children's counselor.
Mhm.
Children are also victims. They
Yes.
are victims sometimes physically, and they're also victims emotionally from
Mhm.
what they witness. So we have a
Yes.
children's counselor. We have 2 adult counselors. One is Spanish speaking.
Mhm.
We also have a Spanish speaking court advocate.
Mhm.
So that population is provided for in those circumstances.
Mhm.
So the Safe House has a case manager.
Mhm.
So if you come in and you need a job, she can help you with that. If you need housing, she can guide you through that process. She
Mhm.
knows what's here in town, what might be available, at
Mhm.
what price, that sort of thing. Again, clothing, food. If you don't have money for food, when you leave the safe house, we will assist you getting food stamps.
Mhm.
Just working through the different agencies in the county that provide assistance
Mm.
and let the victim know just exactly what they can count on and what their options are.
If I were to need housing,
Hmm.
I don't have money to pay the monthly rent.
Hmm.
will the center give me a voucher to pay my rent for at least 6 months or so?
We are working on help with that and have applied for grants for that assistance. It's not quite there yet. If we help you get a job so that you can afford the monthly rent, what we try to do is help with your rent down payment, that first and last month's rent that you have to pay,
Yeah.
with a utilities deposit, and the availability of those funds just depend on how much money we've had coming in and how many other people have needed it. So I can't say if you come to us, we're going to cover that, but we try and we do a lot of that.
Okay. Now, there is a safe house here in Pitt County. Is there a safe house in Martin County or
No,
Washington County?
no, there is not. Those clients have access to the safe house here.
Okay.
The downside is that if they live in Martin or Washington County and work there and have children that are in school there, it's very difficult to come here and spend the night and then travel back when you may not have a car. So it's not an ideal situation,
Yeah.
but depending on the level of desperation, the level of their personal risk, their safety, it's still good to have it available.
Okay. Now, what if I had to pull my children from, say, if I'm living in Washington County and I'm going through a domestic violence situation and I need to escape, come here to Pitt County Safe House. I can pull my children from school, from the Washington County schools, and bring them here to Pitt County schools?
Certainly.
Okay.
It would be just like if you sold your house and moved here.
Okay. So without a whole lot of red tape, I can do that and still be safe.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to the law enforcement, right? What if I were married to a law enforcement officer and that person is the abuser? I may not want to call law enforcement.
I think in some situations, other areas, that could definitely be a high risk. I think here we, again, are so blessed that the local law enforcement would stand behind you.
Okay. Even though my abuser is a law enforcement officer and they stick together now.
Well, of course they do, but you still have rights.
Okay.
And they understand domestic violence enough to know that it is believable or could be. You're talking about my circumstances. When I was going through this, I was married to an MP. And I was told clearly by an attorney that I sought help from not to go to his unit to complain. Times have changed.
Okay.
And, a law enforcement officer now can be prosecuted just as well as anyone else.
Okay. Because we see that a lot on television.
Oh, yeah.
Where yeah, so that's why that's
Yeah.
where I got that from. We have 2 minutes left in this
okay.
program. Is there something, Laura, that you would like to reiterate or something you would like to say that we did not cover?
If you're in a domestic violence situation and your life is at risk, do not hesitate to reach out for help. It's there. You mentioned strangulation. That has become a key indicator for an impending homicide. It's a very typical assault as your situation escalates. People in that situation have been killed. Do not ignore that. Do not ignore your situation. Do not believe it's going away. Seek help.
252-758-4400 is the main number to call during business hours. And the hotline crisis number is 252-752-3811. And that's a 24-hour crisis hotline number
Exactly.
where you will speak with a live person.
Absolutely.
Center for Family Violence Prevention. Miss Laura King has been our special guest on today with One on One with Akela. Help stop domestic violence. If you know about it, say something about it. If you're in it, please seek help for yourself and for your loved ones around you. And also for the abuser, there is help for you too. The abuser, there is help for you too. My suggestion would be to reach out to Jesus for help for the victims and for the abusers. Thank you so much for listening to Awesome Radio 1069. We're all on social media. Our website, wbisawesomeradio.org. We'll see you the next time. Bye bye. Election day for Pitt County Municipality